Hope you don't mind the sound of fans. I'm trying to cool the place down from hitting 90 degrees today, outside anyways. Obviously from the thermometer you can see it only got up to 85 in here, but even that still felt hot if the air wasn't moving. Alright, we've got some things to do, so let's get straight to it.
The wacky world of MultimediaJay.
Here it is, the remains of the system I built in 2005. The case is not the same though, it's from another system I built around the same time for Dad. The case I had back in 2005 got scrapped a long time ago because the door broke off. Now finally all these years later, the door broke off of this one too. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the one piece of computer hardware that cannot serve as a project system. This is the remains of my 2005 system rocking an Athlon 64 4000 plus single-core processor. And of course I threw in my old Radeon 5000 series to run graphics. This system, I don't have enough SSDs to put an SSD in this thing to even run unregistered Windows 10 on it. The last time I did anything with this motherboard was when I tried putting it in Fossil, that old HP case that I have from the late 1990s that I'm trying to make into some kind of sleeper doodle type system. So it looks old and crappy, but it isn't. In the meantime, though, I want to get this system working because, as you all know, Scrapper Dude is doing his thing in my neighborhood, and he knows that I tinker with stuff, mostly computery stuff. So when he gets some computery stuff, he's going to pass it off to me, and I'll see if it still works, see if he could maybe turn around and sell it on eBay or whatever, or help him disassemble it by gutting it like what happened with that IBM. So, yeah. So anyways, some of the pluses from that whole IBM thing is that I wound up with some extra RAM, so that combined with the DDR RAM that came out of this thing is definitely has potential. The big thing though is that this is basically an expendable computer at this point. So if I want to see if a drive that he finds still has any data on it, if it's got like viruses galore or something like that and kills the system, who cares? So the objective here is to jam this thing up with as much RAM as possible, put unregistered Windows 10 on this thing, because we don't really need to customize it or anything, and this machine's not going to be used for anything intelligent ever again anyways, and then have it ready for, you know, he finds a mystery drive or something. It's no skin off my back, I'll just unplug the wireless dongle and whatnot in order to test it. So all of these parts have seen life elsewhere. I've got my old Radeon 5000 series that still works, but it is so old it's basically a legacy product that can't play any games anymore. Got 4 RAM slots, we got the AMD processor with a stock cooler and probably decade-old thermal paste at this point. I'm actually curious if the stock cooler from the FX chip might work on this and give better results because it's a bigger chunk of metal. We'll fool around with that later though. Right now I know this works despite the board looking really nice. An Asus A8N Sly Premium supported SLI. When I first built this thing, this was the system that I built to handle Elder Scrolls Oblivion. That's how far back we're going. When the Silver Bullet died of capacitor plague, being an early 2000s system, I wanted to stick with AMD because I had such good experiences with the AMD Athlon. So here is another Athlon, an Athlon 64 that was out and about at the time. And the Athlon 64, despite having a, besides having a cool hologram type thing on the cooler fan for the stock cooler, this was the last generation where AMD, as Team Green, because they hadn't bought ATI yet and they hadn't changed their color yet, this is the last generation that AMD embarrassed Intel before the Core processors came out and Intel took the crown and the rest is history. So this is actually, I'm actually kind of sad that this system is as old as it is and as obsolete as it is, because look at the board, it's really shiny, it's in like-new condition. I only used it until 2007 when the prices of RAM for AMD systems, or for, original DDR, were so expensive that it made more sense just to build a new system. And that's when I went to Core 2 Duo, and basically the rest is history. Tuxedo was built shortly afterwards, originally to house that Core 2 Duo. So here's what's left. Obviously this is stuff from other systems. I still have a floppy drive in here, but I don't really want to use it for anything. I have no use for it actually. Antec True Power 480 watt with some ketchup and mustard cabling, and some Molex connectors for older drives, as well as that one auxiliary power that's over by the graphics card for some strange reason. Don't ask me what these folks were thinking back in 2005. This board supported SLI. The one and only SLI setup I ever had that required the bridge thing over the top. I ran two GeForce 6600 GTs in this thing. Oh, and how can I get into tinkering with this without talking about the fractal fans? These also came out of other systems. Got one in the back, got one in the front, so there's some airflow. The interesting thing about this Antec case, especially if I get the door to somehow reattach to the case, though I don't think I will, is that the acoustics of the case made it so that a hard drive sounded like a coffee pot going. So it would make this gurgling noise and stuff like that, like a coffee pot brewing some coffee. I thought it was kind of neat at the time and stuff like that. But yeah, this is the system that I want to have handy in case, hey, does this thing still work? Is there data on it? Or should I just throw it in with the metal pile? First question is the RAM question. It's looking like 2 gigs to 3 gigs of RAM are available based on the chips that are available. So I got 2 gigs in the 1 gig sticks if the motherboard will support them. These 2 sticks from the IBM are 256 megs, and then these 3 sticks, which were the original RAM that I was using in this thing, so a Crucial kit and a Kingston kit, are 512 megs. So I'm thinking 3 gigs of RAM. Take the 2 Crucials and add in those 2 other ones as well to totally fill up the RAM slots but not max everything out. I don't know if the board can even handle 1 gig sticks. Another cool thing about this case is it actually has a big drive cage. This thing's practically a server in its own right. Not only that, but they have noise dampening, sound dampening rubber on them, so I can mount a bunch of drives in here, and that's what I want to do eventually, is use this thing as something to use up old drives with or something, and basically store a bunch of drives in here instead of having them sitting in this thing, prone to falling out and stuff like that. I do need one hard drive though to run the operating system because I don't have enough SSDs yet to put one in this thing. So I'm going to use the Western Digital Green, by far the newest of the drives, so it can actually have a useful life. This thing had, I have a lot of stuff from around the start of this decade, but this one was actually from something I built as an enclosure to use with the DVR from that horrible cable job I had. Because of course, DVRs, being little computers in their own right, would usually come with horrible, like 60 or 40 gig drives from long time ago. You couldn't hardly record anything on those things. You always had to have an eSATA drive or something like that in order to get any decent recording. So I just gotta find the weird screws that work with these rubber things in order for, you know, the drives to actually be mountable, which I think I have in my thing full of assorted screws. I should probably 5S that, give them their own, put them all in a bag and put them inside this case because they're specific to this case. Fortunately, the regular cage that has the old Sony floppy drive from back in the day actually has regular mounting points for side screws and doesn't need those special screws. So we'll sort out the screw issue later. This might heat up a bit, but if this drive barbecues the floppy drive, no big loss. I turned off the patent fan, leaving only the box fans as the source of noise here, but anyways, this case is actually an Antec Sonata. It's not an Antec Landboy. Some people think it is just because it looks like one, but it's actually a Sonata. But actually what happened was I originally used this case to put the remains of my HP that was supposed to get me through college that didn't. And I put that in there because the Delosaurus, the original one, was too slow for Dad at the time. So we took the best of both systems and we combined them together. So interesting thing is it does have snap-in fan holders, so you don't have to worry about undoing screws every time you want to swap the fans out at a slight cost of airflow. But this thing is, this case actually, ooh, loose screw, forgot about that. Meant to retrieve that because I thought it fell behind everything. Thought it fell behind the motherboard tray when I was tinkering with some things earlier. Hopefully I didn't screw up the front panel connector too much. It's always hard with those itty-bitty plugs. It's the most annoying part of installing a motherboard by far. But yeah, I actually had a better case for my for the system I was using at the time. I called it Silver Bullet 2. It had this motherboard in it, and I actually have some early YouTube videos that actually show that old Antec case. It was a massive case compared to this. This was the more mid-range, mid-tower case, where space was a little bit more of an issue. But the thing is, the whole thing with the cases was, I always was jealous of this one because it was better with noise and whatnot, with the noise dampening stuff. So even though I had the higher end case that cost more, I actually liked this case better in the long run. Here's what it looks like with the door on there. Unfortunately, I caught the door, well, the door wasn't closing anyways, but I caught the door on something, so now it falls off. Boo! Thought I could be better than that. So yeah, well, we could always rig something up. Just drill some holes or run some metal or something like that. Half the problem was that the so-called hinge was plastic to begin with. So we had this one up here that just snapped off completely. I get a drill, drill some holes, put a piece of metal through that. I don't know, whatever we can get to work in terms of, or something to that effect. Because the door itself just has 2 holes, so all we need is something for it to attach to. Shoot, drill 2 holes and take some screws, some really thin screws, put them down through and put a bolt on the other side. I don't know. We'll figure something out. Got one of the drives that was formerly from the Silver Bullet in this thing, but I also have, even though it's EIDE, the DVD combo drive from the IBM. I don't know if it does anything because I couldn't get it to read a disc earlier, but this is one thing we should probably test out at some point. See if we can get it to read something. Of course, this processor will actually support 64-bit code, so it will. So it might be worth testing out the optical drive as well. Cool to go. Just jam this sucker right in there and then close the gap in the case. Actually, yeah, this thing used to have rails, but I misplaced those as well. This is why nowadays I have bags of all the case-specific parts stuffed somewhere in the case. I think in this case, this would be a good spot for it. If I can find where everything went, put it all back together, put it in a bag, give it a 5S home down in this nook underneath the front fan. Should all fit. Or underneath there's a little bit of space underneath where the cage, underneath the cage. That'd be a good spot. Whatever works. Okay, had to redo the Windows 10 CD to get it back to 64-bit, because this thing can handle it. AMD 64. Woohoo! Alright, now here's why I don't want this to ever be a project system ever again. 8.3 watt standby draw. I don't know if this thing will support ERP. I think it might be too old for it. Alright, what happens when we push the button? Nothing. Because I screwed up the power switch. Stupid little front panel connectors, man.
Epic fail.
Alright, let's try this again.
Epic fail.
Alright, let's try this again.
Epic fail.
I'm still missing something.
Epic fail.
I think that thing is color-coded, and that the little diagram on the board might not be exactly the thing I should have been looking at.
Epic fail.
The diagram was backwards, or should I say it was upside down. I thought that the diagram was the text on top is the stuff on top, but it's actually the stuff that's closer by, and the ones on the bottom are for the pins on top. I hate front panel connectors. Looking at those itty-bitty things all in half. Anyways, what do we have for lights? Alright, we have the right stuff lighting up, and it looks like one of the hard drive lights is working. This thing has 3 different hard drive lights anyways. Crunch, we have a postcode. What is it? I say what is it because we're plugged into the integrated audio, which should be playing an actual voice recording type thingy of what it is. Let's turn the volume up on it. Everything's running full blast, so obviously something's not working right. I think it's the graphics card that's not up to snuff. Why isn't it doing it again? Oh, now the power switch is a little screwy. Is it on? Nope. Alright. Oh wait, yeah it is. What happened to the lights? Oh, I'm looking at the wrong one. This thing might have some glitches to it. Oh, now it posted. Very, very interesting. Well, the thing should be talking any second now, saying, booting, or something. Come on. That's one of the cool things about this board. I'm not getting anything graphics-wise, probably because the monitor is still on analog. Hey, something, text something. Alright. Flaky component has been identified. I definitely have to fix the wrong hard drive light blinking at some point. Check it out, 3 hard drive lights. What motherboard would have had that? Oh.
System failed VGA test.
System failed VGA test. The one and only talking motherboard I've ever owned over the years. Graphics card. And let's fire it up again. Gotta get into the BIOS though. Well, everything's not going full blast. I'm also curious how good that RAM from the doorstop's gonna do. Normal post. Let's go into the BIOS and see what's there. System date and time, May 18th, 2006. I don't know if the BIOS, I don't know if the CMOS battery is any good. Things should be good to go now. Let's see if it starts installing Windows 10. I'm sure this will probably go a little quicker than that Pentium 4 did. No hyper-threading though. This is back when hyper-threading was so... Oh, there we go. Yay! And it does show 3 gigs of RAM. Fun stuff, fun stuff, fun stuff. DDR333. It's only running in single channel mode. Might want to reposition some of those sticks then so that they're in 1, 3, 2, 4, etc., etc. That used to be a thing once upon a time. And of course you gotta wait for this stupid thing to boot up. All this so you can have like...
System completed. Power on self-test. Computer now booting from operating.
It doesn't even say operating system before the recording cuts off. You know, whoever did those recordings for the talking motherboard must really feel old nowadays. Once upon a time, motherboards talked. It only talks if you use the onboard audio, though. The minute you put in a sound card, it's all over. So this thing's not getting a sound card. The whole talking motherboard thing is pretty cool. So we had a lot of bays back in the day. I mean, I could theoretically squeeze an SSD into where the floppy drive is, or even a card reader or something like that. And you got 4 5 1/4s for people that have to put a bazillion optical drives in there, or whatever. So it's, of course, I have the one from the Pentium 4 here, which we'll test at some point later on. But for now, though, we just got to get Windows 10 installed on that WD Green so we can see if the mystery drive has anything on it. And by mystery drive, I mean this thing from Scrapper Dude. Barracuda, 160 gig. I think I had a drive or 2 of these back in the day. What's the date code? 2007. Of course, when he handed it to me, it was too hot to handle because it was in direct sunlight in his truck. So I think either that or mechanical shock probably killed the drive. But we'll see. It looks like I bit off a bit more than I can chew this time. I took the front cover off the computer because the front USB ports aren't very aligned all that well, so I have to fix that at some point. But it would appear that I've hit some technical hitch with installing Windows 10 because no matter what RAM I have in this thing, or even if I switch from an optical disc to a USB drive, it gets stuck trying to load the initial loading screen. Now, I don't know if that's because this motherboard's finally dying after all these years, or what have you, but I need to revert to Plan B if I want to find out what's on that mystery drive. I do have some plans for this thing, though, that don't involve Windows 10, so I'm just gonna, walk away from this machine as is and come back to it later. Let's get the Silver Bullet up and running again with a rinky-dink Windows 10 installation and see what's on that mystery drive. There it is! Old Reliable itself. All these years later, not on the original hardware, but it still just keeps chugging along, and chugging along, and chugging along, despite zero cable management. Yeah, there's been some folks that have been like, where can I get one of those cases? And I'm like, you don't want one of these cases. There is no cable management. Either you rig something up with some double-sided tape or what have you, or you're going to have wires going every which way. Fortunately, this isn't a main system or anything, and so I'll just leave it as the rat's nest that it is. I don't know if I even need the fan controller anymore. I mean, I've got, I actually have these plugged in. I have these plugged in because this thing only has 80mm fans. Even though they're Vantech Stealths, they're still 80mm. So, if the Ketchup and Mustard Fest doesn't get too many wires caught in too many spinning blades, I'd like to see if this thing will still work. If the stock cooler on the Intel Core 2 Duo doesn't fall off again. It may not fit the 5S color scheme that I want around here because it's silver, but hey, it's old and gray. It's had a good run, and it draws a watt and change in ERP mode because it actually is recent enough to have ERP. Now, what was on this thing? Probably Android x86, if I remember right. Yep. Let's see here. If I can get the board to consistently take power.
Epic fail.
Much like its 2005 predecessor, this board also has auxiliary power via Molex, but at least it's over in a corner of the board that might actually be closer to the power supply this time. Let's try using a separate Molex channel and not one that is sharing space with fans that are being controlled by a fan controller. I think the circuit in that case might have been what was causing this board to have trouble. Probably drained power-wise if the fans are turned all the way down. Got it. Had to do some plugging and unplugging, but I finally got this thing to stay running for more than 5 seconds at a time. Had to unplug, replug the RAM, unplug, replug the graphics card, unplug, replug the main and auxiliary power, and now I get a post. Yippee skippy! Unfortunately we lost all our BIOS settings because I popped the CMOS battery while I was at it. But once it's done going, ooh, settings have been reset. Oh, what do you know? Let's see here. Let's just do last known good. Now watch this bring back the problem. Does it start? What was last on this thing? Oh, here we go. Oh, cool, it restored everything. And we still have our 4 gigs of RAM. Woohoo! Now, what OS was on this thing? Android x86, right? I don't need that if that's the case. Just want to put a generic Windows 10 template back on it. Oh, Ubuntu. Well, that's cool. Let's blow everything away and put Windows 10 back on this beast. Woo! Generic Windows 10 installation. And the Core 2 Duo is down to 75 watts when idle, unlike that 150 watt surprise known as the Pentium 4. Or, excuse me, 150 watt oven, whatever. Anyways, yeah, let's get the mystery drive and finally see what's on it, or if it even works. Okay, the disposable computer, so to speak, is ready to do its thing. For safety's sake, I've disconnected the computer from the network. I don't know what's on this mystery drive. So I've disconnected the computer from the network, and I've also, it's not important what happens to the silver bullet at this point, because I'm planning on wiping everything out again anyways. That's why I'm not really setting up Windows too much on this thing. I've got some more plans for this machine that we'll save for later. Alright, let's see what happens. There should be no other... It always helps if you turn the power supply back on.
Epic fail.
Alright, let's see what happens!
Well, that was pretty random. Any signs of weird noises from the drive is spun up. I don't hear any clicks and stuff. This thing was too hard. This thing was too hot to handle yesterday, so maybe we lucked out. The thing didn't get barbecued. Once again, I'm not showing you the screen because someone's privacy is at risk here. We have another bozo that threw out a hard drive without wiping their data from it. Circa July 2014, nonetheless. Let's see here. Documents. Oh, what do you know? Look at all of this stuff. Tons and tons and tons of music, and who knows what else. McAfee type stuff. Oh, he was a big fan of Juarez, too. What do you know? This guy downloaded software off of Juarez sites. This thing could have a bazillion viruses on it. Well, that's one of the reasons why I wanted kind of an isolated environment for this machine and stuff like that. Well, before we knock everything out anyways. So, yeah. Oh, what's in the videos folder? What's in the downloads? Yeah, well, this guy did some shady stuff, obviously, but anyways, it's time to destroy this drive. Time to wipe it clean, and since it still works, run it till it quits. Don't forget, folks, this came out of a scrap pile, and it got so hot in Scrapper Dude's truck that I couldn't even hold on to it because he had it in direct sunlight on the dashboard. He had this thing in direct sunlight on the dashboard. It was so hot I thought for certain the circuitry would have overheated. But I guess it cooled back down and actually got working again. Alright, it's time to do the right thing with this again. Because it's time to do the right thing with this thing again. Now, this is the... I believe this showed up as the F drive. Oh crap, one of my drives wasn't unplugged properly. But we don't have any viruses on the games drive now. There we go. So here's the old here's this dude's partition as well as a recovery file. Destroy. Delete volume. Let's destroy this. This is a 160 gig drive, so it's really tricky because I have a 160 gig SSD in here too. But my drive is disk 0. And now we can reformat this sucker, make a new simple volume. Hey, I could even dban DOD wipe the thing if I really wanted to, but let's bring it back, add a drive letter F, and let's format it, and bada bing. That local disk D? What the heck? Oh, okay. So, and here it comes, back into service as a perfectly fine drive until it quits for whatever reason. I have to go through a bunch of these old hard drives and run like diagnostic tests on them anyways, just to see. But yeah, this is Seagate drive, hadn't been used since July 2014, still had the dude's user file, Windows file. This was somebody's C drive a couple of years ago, and I just saved this guy's data from going into the wrong place. All because you just toss the drive. And folks, Gronk spike your drives, or destroy them, or disassemble them, or whatever. I mean, the more unusable it is, the better. Well, that's another drive for the pile, and of course, I'm kind of surprised it works, but we gotta run a diagnostic on a lot of these drives at some point, see if any of them are getting close to failing, and then smash the crap out of them if they are to finish them off. Or we could always disassemble them and use the drive platters as coasters and stuff, but this sucker is now blank, and it is ready to, join the crowd, so to speak. Might run some diagnostics on some of these drives at some point. Now, the Silver Bullet has more to be done with, so to speak, as well as the 2005 system. We'll save that for another day. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay, signing off. Thanks for stopping by.
Want to support the wackiness? Visit patreon.com/multimediajay.